Okay, so we've given enough time for everybody to log in. I'd like to welcome everybody to the ISSA Triad of North Carolina 2020 Security Summit. My name is Carlos Valencia, and I'll be doing the multifunction device basic settings and hardening. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera now so you get a full screen of what we'll be reviewing. All right, so today's agenda is going to be management services, multifunction device orientation, and hardening of security features. So for the multifunction device orientation and hardening and security, we're going to do a 2-for-1. We're going to be securing the device and getting you oriented to the device at the same time. A little bit about myself. I am a XEROX certified managed print service analyst. Did a good time in the U.S. Army as a signal system support specialist. I am Security Plus certified. I am an ISSA Fayetteville Fort Bragg board member and cybersecurity or cyber defense education center advisory board member. And if you need to contact me, my information is there. My disclaimer, there are many ways of doing things in IT and information security. I'm just going to show you one or two of the ways of doing it. So if you know a different way or you say, well, that's not the right way, just know there is a different way of doing things. I do not know it all, nor will I ever claim that I do. My opinions do not reflect the opinions of XEROX or Digital Document Solutions, which is my current employer at the time. What is managed print services? Well, what we do is we normally do an assessment and answer the following questions of what is the cost to have a printer, the toner, paper, and how much time are you using in all your processes to do the job that you need to do. And if you're asking, are we at a toner again, then analysis is something you would probably benefit from. So if you look at toners, and this is some pricing that I got off of a website real quick, didn't want to specify specifically which printer, which toner, but this is more of a printer that you have at home that you bought off the shelf. And these are the prices. So basically, when you buy your toner from the store, if you look at it or you look it up on the website, you'll see that most of these average about 300 pages. Broken down, you're looking for black and white about 10 cents per page. For color, about 11 to 12 cents a page. But most of these percentages or these prices are based off of a 5% page coverage. So that means if you're just printing, a paper for work, paper for school, that's what they're more or less looking at. So if you print something like this, basically here we've broken it down. If each grid represents 5%, you're looking at a true cost of about almost $2 per page. All right, so what we do is an analysis of your environment, and what we use is a XEROX device agent. It's a quick application that you install onto your computer. What that does is goes out and searches for all the printers that are networked within your environment. As soon as that is installed, you will see these the printers that are visible and that are actively on your network. Benefit about this is if this is used on an office manager's computer, IT's computer, a server that IT has access to, they'll be able to see this. This isn't hidden somewhere. There's no command line interface that you have to go and use. It is, point and click, and you're able to see it. As you can see, it's showing all the colors that are within that device. If it has a color device, black and white, it'll show you where you're at. That's if you're not under a managed print service where somebody else, such as myself, would be monitoring some of this information as well. Along with that, if you double click on the printers that you see, you'll be able to see all your information. Best part about this application is it'll show you any alerts on that device. It'll present you with error codes that you can further research. It'll give you steps on how to correct those issues when you research them. One of the things that we hear most about customer service, IT, saying, hey, my client can't print. And the first thing we tell them is, have you checked the XDA? And as soon as they look at those alerts, a lot of times they're just out of paper. So that does happen occasionally, but it'll also give you more information as far as detailed information under your consumables, information of your device. If you're having to go into the embedded web page of your printers to see, maybe get the MAC addresses, what's attached to it, the picture on the screen here will show you that there is a finisher attached to that as well. About 90% of any issues with any network device, computers, printers, cell phones, if you're having an issue with those, most of those are resolved by doing a reboot. All of a sudden it works. So this gives you a benefit of, if you're having somebody saying that there's an issue and you know a reboot will correct that issue, you're presented with a handy dandy button to reset the printer on the top right, and it'll reboot that printer. It'll, correct 90% of your issues. All right, so environments are different. If you're working from home, you don't necessarily need a Altalink 8070, which is, one of the higher end devices that we normally offer. So what we do is, with our assessment, we give you a near perfect estimate on how much you're printing, how much that is costing you. So what we would present to you is a device that would better fit your environment. A lot of the questions we like to ask is, how many users do you have? How much are you printing? And that's more or less what we answer with our assessments. Questions that we would need to know to better fit you with the printer of your needs is your business going to go up in personnel? Do you anticipate any increases in business? And the answer is normally yes, because if you're not increasing your business, you're going out of business, right? What's the business environment? Are you going to be printing, scanning, faxing, using cloud environments such as Google Cloud? That kind of information is very beneficial to us, so that we could kind of narrow down which printer would probably be best. So along with that, there are additional attachments, standard features that these devices are offered. These that you see here are more or less for the Altalink series. Those are more, I want to say, medium-sized enterprise environments. As you can see, as the options as well, they are Wi-Fi enabled, RFID, external keyboards. Those are the additional features that are available, and many more. So like I said, these devices are customizable for each environment, because we know that no environment is the same. We could go from one real estate agency to the next, and their environment are like completely different. All right, so along with that, if you choose, we can configure the device to your needs, and we do it securely. A lot of times we do ask what the security environment, firewalls, network restrictions, any security concerns that the client may have. A lot of times what we do is we do basic setups for our devices, and you'll see a lot of those basic setups throughout the presentation that not necessarily the client request, but if they don't give us any guidance as far as information security, we go ahead and set those up just to be on the safe side, so that if something does come up, we know that we have a procedure, a set standard that whenever we deploy a device, it is set up with those default security features. So the first thing you would do if you're doing it on your own is log into the embedded web page, and the way to do that is to use the IP address. As soon as you get there, you'll select login, and your user ID, the default user ID is admin. As you can see, a simple Google search for the default passwords for XEROX is admin, and password is 1111. So one thing about that is that most people will keep that. Well, due to some changes within legislation, one specifically that popped to mind was California. XEROX is an international company, so they have their devices to be able to be customizable to any environment. That includes countries and their information security and information technology standards. So one thing that did come about was California passed their bill saying, default passwords should not be the same password. So XEROX has done a firmware change to their system, where each device does not have the same username and password whenever they're shipped out. Since it's not a huge information security risk to share that information with you, by default, when the devices are shipped, it's no longer admin 1111 to log into that device. It's actually the serial number now, and every serial number is different. So trying to guess the default password to a specific device is going to be a lot harder than typing in admin 1111. And if you'd like to look into the actual bill, I've provided the references below. As soon as you log into the web page itself, it provides you with a landing page, and that landing page will give you some quick details that may be beneficial to customer support or IT support as far as what's going on with that device. If somebody says we can't print, and you see that maybe one of the toners is at 0, that is a clear indication. The control panel would also let them know that they're at a toner. Maybe if you look at the top of the screen here, you'll see that the paper sizes are in millimeters and in inches, and maybe somebody's trying to print out of drawer 4, and they're telling their print driver to print from there, but their pages are set to a different size. So the printer is going to kind of say, hold on, that doesn't work for me because you're trying to force me to print from this drawer, excuse me, and that's the wrong page, the wrong paper size. Along with that, you'll be able to see the additional features that that are available, as far as if somebody says, hey, I can't scan the email. Well, it's not even configured, so that would make sense, right? Billing, that's more or less so you could more for office managers if they want to know how much has been printed. That's the very, very manual way of keeping track of what's been printed. We'll go into more of that tracking and accounting features. So on the very same page, you have some quick links, very beneficial for customer service or IT as well, especially that control panel. Where is it? Yes, the remote control panel. Greatest thing that they've come up with. If you're having a user and they're at the printer, or your customer service and the printer is maybe 3 blocks down, and you want to see specifically what's going on the control panel, you're able to do a remote control panel there and see exactly what is going on with that printer as if you were standing in front of it. I use this many times throughout the day whenever I'm doing customer service with one of my clients. Information pages that, if you want to look at more specifics that you may not have available above, you'll be able to select those, or configuration report. All right, so once you select configuration overview, it'll provide you with the applications that are available, or the basic configurations that somebody would typically use, particularly the networking and scan the email or anything like that. Oh, that was in the wrong place. All right, so configuration report, each of these items are hyperlinked. So if you need to select a specific item, it'll send you straight to it. So if you select security, it'll give you all the security information related to this device, whether it's enabled, not enabled, any information that you might need, depending on the questions that anybody has asked. Do I have any questions up to this point? So I have a question here regarding the California legislation. Do you know if this affects more than just printer devices? From what I saw from the legislation report, it was just devices. It wasn't specifically for printers. The only reason I mention it as printers is because I'm doing a printer presentation. So to my understanding, from what I read, it's just general devices. I hope that answered your question. Sorry. All right, so after the configuration overview, you'll see the description. This is very important, especially if you have multiple devices, to use a naming convention. So I know that many IT departments know their devices by IP address. How they do that, I will never understand. But device names, locations, asset tags, anything that you would need as an IT to know where that device is, organization, specific departments, or maybe if that department is in a different city, you may want to go ahead and input that information so that it's readily available to you. So one thing that is always harped on is always update your devices. Always configure them. As soon as you get it out of the box, get the latest updates. Because many of the changes that have happened have been pushed out through those firmware upgrades. Now, if you notice on the bottom left, you'll see software upgrade. And I got on the presentation firmware upgrade. Reason being is on the device it says that, but on the website I'm going to show you, it'll say firmware upgrade. So that way we're on the same page there. So as soon as you select the software upgrade on the embedded web page, you'll see this here. Fleet Orchestrator is a new feature that XEROX has pushed out. It really assists on defaulting your devices to basic configurations. If you're in an environment that everything is the same, no matter where you go, no matter which department you go to, it's going to have the same features, the same buttons. Fleet Orchestrator assists in that. You have one device that's the publisher, so you don't need an additional server. So you link your devices and you push this information out, and it'll provide you with clone files that you would need to push those out. So as soon as you come to this page here, you're going to have to go ahead and select create install file. As soon as you get that, you'll see this page here, or it's a pop-up. So you're given a couple options here to install a file, or to create a file, or get a shared file. The shared file is coming from your publisher device or your publisher printer. So you would select install file, but first you'd have to go get your firmware software, for any of the updates. You would go to Xerox.com, unless you have a managed print service, such as myself, and we would actually set it up to automatically update. That is one of the default procedures that we do when we get a device. We set it up to automatically update, and we have a third-party application that does that for us. You would select all support and drivers, and from there, you would be able to select your printer. So we're working with an Altalink 8055. As soon as you get there, so it'll give you a separate page. This is what you'll see there. These are two of the options that are available. The very first one, you'll see at the very top of every time you select, whether it's 8055 or a different printer, you'll see the drivers and downloads there. Whether you select on that one or the multifunction printer support, it'll take you to the same page with the different tabs. Once you get there, you want to scroll down all the way to the bottom till you see the firmware. We recommend getting the latest one. As you can see, there are patches that are pushed out as well. Those are more or less provided to Xerox partners and Xerox themselves. So you would download this, and while you're there, we also recommend downloading your drivers that you would need for your printer. So these devices are enabled for you to do a plug and play, be able to go through your control panel, get the printer drivers, but the reason we recommend using the specific drivers here is more customized to your environment, and it'll provide you more features that you would probably use. So the PostScript and the PCL drivers, that is printer dependent. Whether you purchase your device with just the BPCL, or if you purchased it with the PostScript, it would determine which drivers you would use. I'm just upset that it took me this long to figure it out, because I did deal with a lot of printers in the Army, and it was an interesting adventure to try to install a printer. So one of the things you want to look at to make sure that you're using the correct driver, you want to know which platform you're on. If any of these platforms are not the ones that you're on, it won't work. All right, so next thing you want to do, I think I might have skipped something here. I'm sorry. So as soon as you download it, you select the install the firmware upgrade, and you would direct the printer to where you save those the software at, and it'll automatically push it out. Printer will reboot a couple times, and it takes 99.99% of the times with no issue. All right. So next thing we recommend is knowing specifically how you're going to be accessing this device. What kind of what way are you going to access it, as far as you want people to log in when they go into the control panel, or do you have an environment which has an RFID? We recently did an install where the client just wanted straight up RFID. They didn't want anybody, being able to log into the device. Everything was locked out. Those RFIDs are also compatible with their physical security, so they didn't have to get a different card or anything like that. As you can see, they are also smart card compatible. CAT card, common access cards, network. If you have your device networked to your server, Active Directory, that is also an option. Or you could set it up within the device. You don't have a server, you don't have smart cards. All you have is the printer itself, but you don't want just anybody to go up and be able to print 10,000 pages just because they're mad. So if you don't have servers or anything like that, we would help you set up the XEROX standard accounting. With that, you'd also create the users. With those users, the username is what they would use to log in, or the friendly name would be what they would be able to see whenever they go up there and they log in, their name will display. Username is what they're going to use, so we recommend keeping this short. Passwords, even though there is a touch screen and the keyboard, every time somebody goes up to that printer, they're going to have to put that code in and that username. So we do recommend something smaller. I know it's not within the NIST criteria there as far as how long a password should be, but again, security versus comfort and your efficiency as well. As soon as you set up your accounts, you're able to do your service tracking, and this would narrow down as far as any particular user. Do you want them to scan? Do they have any reason to scan? Limited access, one of the principles of information security. So one of the easy, quick clicks here is enable tracking on color. This would mean that when somebody goes up to the device, if they want to print in color, they would have to put in a code. Basic information as far as printing goes is black and white copies or prints are significantly less expensive than color copies, mostly because you are using more toner to create those colors on the pages. If you just have a user that has absolutely no reason to scan, you could lock them out. Do they need a print? No, but they have access to it. You're able to lock them out here. So you can break it down to a granular level where people can print specific color. Do you only want them to be able to use a particular drawer? So if you're in an office environment and you have an office manager or an accountant that is printing checks, well, if you want to have that drawer designated just for that person, and have the checks in there and that drawer locked, then this would be the place where you would say nobody's allowed to print to that specific drawer or that tray unless it's this person, and it would never let them print. All right, so these are even more options for you to lock out. If you want to have somebody have access to the saved jobs, so there's a feature on the printers that you could save jobs on the printer. You're an office that uses an application for any customer that comes in. You've ran out of those. Instead of having to go to somebody's computer, print them out, or find that person or search where that document is, you would have them readily available at the printer, and you just have to select that job and print it out on the spot. That's one of those time savers that we mentioned earlier. The next thing we recommend, and one of our standard procedures, is to set NTP up, whether we do it manually or the client has provided us the information for their NTP, their preferred NTP. Normally what I use is anything that's recommended by NIST as a NTP server. That way it's to that time, there's no deviation, and a lot of the systems do require time to be correct. So along with this, if you're using any of the next features that we're looking at here, is the energy saver. Cost cutting. There's no point in the printer using energy, at 100% all the time. So if you have your NTP set correctly and you set your times, whether you're working from Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, you would set your device to wake up at that time and be readily available. Other than that, it goes into a sleep mode where it's using a fraction of the energy than it would be if it's constantly on. Along with this, you could allow the USB to go to sleep too. So maybe somebody's coming in at late at night, popping a USB in there and printing the world. You could actually put that down where it's not functioning during those times. Next thing we do recommend is the connectivity, getting your DNS server, DNS in there, your IPs, specific configurations to each individual environment. All right, and along with that, if you want to enable Wi-Fi direct, so you don't necessarily need a Wi-Fi adapter if you're not going to need it. If you just want people to print directly to that device, you can enable it here. All right, along with the connectivity, you have additional options here as far as AirPrint. If you just hate and do not like and will never allow a Apple device to log into your system, this would be the place to go ahead and lock that out. Google Mopria is a XEROX application as well. That allows you to be on the go. If you have different locations and you're allowed on their network, you're able to go ahead and when you get there, you're able to print out what you need. If you're at a different location, you should be able to print as well. To maybe somebody's waiting for you to print something out at their location, or you have something that they might need. You could choose to email it, or you could just choose to print it for them. Along with this here, you could do the USB. You could disable it. I know a lot of DoD environments are no USB period, so this would be one of those locations where you would just go ahead and disable that. Many settings. The list goes on. So as I'm seeing this list here, I'm just thinking ports, and as an information security professional, what would I stop? What would I disconnect? What do I not want this printer to have access to, or the outside world to have access through this printer? One of the things we do recommend is just shutting off WSD, where it doesn't make your device discoverable to anybody that doesn't need to. Basically, if somebody somehow finds a way into your network, they can easily just search and find that printer. We typically disable this because the way we do it is we direct each computer or the server that shares those drivers directly to the those devices. Oh. Okay, so I do have another question from Tiffany here regarding the permissions. I'm sorry I didn't see that pop up when we were on that. So you can create groups, which would make it a little bit easier for you to select finance department, as you mentioned. You know, being able to add those users to those specific groups, it would make it a lot easier for you. Now, keep in mind that these printers are designed to be in the specific environments where there are no servers, there is no IT. And if you do go through a managed print service such as myself, we would assist you in setting these up so that we understand that, you know, not everybody is IT savvy or just IT in general. So we would help out and we would set up the groups for you, and we would add those groups. We would get that information throughout the assessment period to know who would need what permissions and what they need to print. And I hope that answered your question. All right, so one of the common things that are used is the email, scan the email. These devices are very compatible. They work with Office 365, Google, if it's a email service, if you have an internal SMTP server, it works with this. Active Directory works with it. So if you have an internal SMTP and you know that IP is not going to change ever, we recommend using the IP address because it won't change. If you are using Office 365 or Google environment, we recommend using the SMTP naming convention so that if that company does change that IP address, your device doesn't go down. Along with that, so down here where it says device email address, these devices do require an email address, whether you're using your personal email address or you're using just a generic email address of like do not reply DDS at dds.com or something like that. Along with that, to improve your security posture, we do recommend not using port 25. But if you're using Office 365 or Google, they do have security standards where port 25 will not work ever. So we do recommend having a email address that isn't specifically to a person, because that device will use that email address. So when you receive somebody receives the email, it'll say from, and it's from this, you know, this particular person. So if somebody is in a vent mode and they email something, you know, vulgar to maybe your boss, you know, it's not going to say, you know, this is from Carlos at dds.com. It'll say the device name and do not reply or whatever. So that kind of gives you a little bit more security as far as nobody taking advantage of your device. Along with that, you do have the option of having the people log in with their own username or anything like that, as far as whenever they're sending emails, or that information can be stored on the device. We typically go with being stored on the device, so you don't have to put in the password all the time. It's stored on there, and all you have to do is select email and use your requirements and send it off. Encryption, depending on what your environment is, these are the encryption standards that are available. Again, we don't recommend no encryption. We have ran into those environments, but I assume that they're very confident in their network security and their infrastructure. So again, that is, basically on the client. We do advise them and let them know that that's not the secure method and not within any regulations recommended by anybody in information security. All right, file size management. So we do know that there are specific email servers that only will allow you so much data to be pushed through an email. If you know those specifications, this is where you would put it on there so that nobody tries to take advantage or push too much information, and it would let them know at the device that no, this doesn't work. Or if you do the no, so it would let them know and say, these are the files too big, instead of just saying fail. One of the great things about that I like about this device is that it does have the test configuration. So instead of having to set up the device, go to the printer, test it there, and if you do get a fail, then you have to go back to your computer, configure, troubleshoot, make your changes. Instead of doing all that, if your settings are correct, you put in an email address there. It shouldn't take more than 5 seconds for it to say complete or successful. That way, those settings are correct. Email, password, anything like that, you can correct on the spot instead of having to run back and forth from your printer to make any changes or any testing. Alrighty, so along with some of the settings that are available is the edit tray. So again, if you are in an environment that for a fact that the paper will not change from any drawer, and we have been in those environments where all they use is 8.5 by 11 on every single drawer. And one of the features within the device is that when you open a drawer, put paper in there and close it, it'll ask you to confirm whether that's what you put in there, or it'll measure the paper. As you see auto selection, it'll show it. Actually, the auto selection is that paper size, but it'll ask you to confirm, is this the paper you selected or put in there? Now, the reason it does that is because whenever you put any paper in that device, it asks you specifically so that it can readjust itself. If you have recycled paper in there, glossy paper, just standard thin paper, it knows what it is, so that once it doesn't, one, overly put too much toner on there, two, whenever it is sealing the toner to the paper, if you're putting laminated paper in there and you're saying it's cardstock paper, well, the cardstock, the fusing temperature on that paper is going to be significantly higher for cardstock than it would be for transparency paper. So it'll ask you that way it doesn't melt the paper or plastic within the device and you have to call for service. So it's very important, especially when it comes to the type of paper. Paper does matter if you're using thick paper, thin paper. One, for the quality of your images, and for the device to know specifically the heat and how much toner to put on there. All right, so along with this is on your display, on your control panel, you're able to put any information on there as far as, well, these are the options that are available. Whether you want to be able to provide your client with the IP address. This is particularly helpful if you're doing customer support. Somebody calls, you're really not sure what the IPs of that is, and you have to ask the client. Instead of asking the client to search throughout the device to kind of find that or print a configuration page, it's readily available. Or you could put a security message stating, there's a secure device, unauthorized access that is part of the information security standard to your devices, that they do have some kind of security message. Because if you don't post that it is a secure device or authorized personnel only, then it's basically like not putting a private property sign on your home. All right, so next thing we're going to jump into is some of the security here that we enable, as far as audit logs, emails. They do come with McAfee as default. Every single device has McAfee on it. Now, this here, you would set it up if you want to know, if there is malware on your device, I would hope and assume that you would want to know. So this here would provide you your alerts and any logs that would be sent out. All right, and so do you have any questions? All right, no questions at this time. All right. So Secure Print is one of the features that is a standard within these devices. Reason for Secure Print is that maybe you work at, maybe you're the accountant of the company, and you don't want your checks to print until you're physically in front of that device. So you want to be able to either make sure that nobody's able to see what you're, if somebody comes up behind you, they don't really need to know what job was printed. Maybe you have somebody's dismissal paperwork, and that's what it's titled. You kind of don't want to show those. So this gives you the option to hide those job names. Under the USB, this is where you would go ahead and disable so most of these devices come with the front and rear. This is where you would disable either one if your environment calls for it. All right, so one of the things we also recommend is doing the image overwrite. So you have the immediate overwrite, which is basically it gets rid of the job on the hard drive immediately. So if you have a high security environment, this is what you would use. You have an overwrite. You're able to do the scheduled overwrite, which would allow you to, if you have your device and you don't want to continually do the overwrite, you're able to schedule it for maybe on Saturday while nobody's there. Because when you do the full disk overwrite, it'll take some time. It'll take about 20 minutes to almost an hour, depending on how much data is on that drive. So you do have the option to select standard or full. Now, the thing about the difference between the standard and the full, if you do have any saved jobs on that printer, it will remove them. So with this here, if you want to do a full, but you don't want to lose any of your saved jobs that you have on there, you would have to set up a backup in order for it to be able to retrieve those and reinstall them or put them back on that drive. PII, if you want to go ahead and limit what people can see, maybe somebody's doing some shoulder surfing and they don't really need to be. If you don't want this information to be visible to anybody else behind the person using the device, you would utilize this to go ahead and dot everything out. Again, more so the McAfee, you're able to get the logs, or you're able to enable or disable it. Why would you want to disable it? I don't know. I wouldn't recommend it. I would recommend getting the email alerts. And in the previous device, in the previous screens, one of the alerts that was available on there is XEROX device agent. So if you want those alerts to go through that, this would be a benefit. Or actually, it's on this screen here, down on the bottom right. You're able to allow that. Centerware Web is a XEROX proprietary application. Not going to go too far in, well, not going to go into it because there's some setting up and I'm not 100% familiar with it. So I'm not going to speak on that. But it is also, I believe, one of the options for the Centerware is a paid subscription. And we all like freeware, so we'll keep it at that. So one of the features on here is the watchdog, where you want to go ahead and get email notifications and how frequently you want to know what's going on. So if you have somebody monitoring that in third-party information security, this is where you would set it up to know, specifically when things are happening within your printer. All right. So the control panel, you're in memory. It'll give you alerts as well as to when you're running out of stuff. If you want those alerts to be visible to the user, and down at the bottom, days remaining. So this is more or less if you don't have a managed print service, you want your office manager, anybody who is responsible for keeping that device running at all times, you could get an alert, or on the device, let people know when your toner is running out so that they could proactively order it. All right, so obviously you want to get the emails, or you want to know specifically what's going on with your device. This notification setting will allow you to create 3 different groups. This will break it down as far as who needs to know what. Not everybody needs to know everything. So if you want to go ahead and say, office manager gets the alerts for billing and supplies, so that they're aware where they're at and if they need to order it. Maybe you have IT and security, let them know whenever there is a alert for the watchdog. So again, back to Tiffany's question, this allows you to break it down into groups and specifically who needs to know what. Oh. So, one of the things that we do recommend whenever you have set your device up, it's perfect, and well, 99.99 perfect. Whenever it's set, it's good to go. We always recommend to have a backup. You have 2 options. You could either do a clone file, which if you go and purchase another device of the same kind of device, you could use that clone file whenever you get that device, and instead of having to go through every single device and install it, you could either do it through the embedded web page, or you could do it on the spot in front of the device. This is a godsend and a lifesaver. Recently, I did an 86 device installation. So instead of going, whenever we'd unpack them, power them up, instead of having to manually set every single one up, I popped in the thumb drive. The clone file was pushed out, and everything was set to every specific configuration. I do have this also set up in my office so that when a device does come in and I need to configure it, instead of going through and setting up every single NTP setting, the only thing we really don't go through is setting up the email or any of the SMB scanning or anything like that, because it has to be customizable to the client. So what we typically do is set it up for the basic information security or default features that we would recommend to our clients. You can also do a backup. You could back up to a server, or you could back up to the actual device. This would be able to restore if there is a critical error within the device. You're able to do it. Typically, if there is a service called on the device, the technician would basically do a fresh install on that device where, basically to default settings. So if they would do that, you would have a clone file. If you do a backup or a restore setting, this would also allow you to be able to go back to where you were with your device. Any settings, any data, it would be able to put it back in. All right, and this example here is the backup restore that I did. You can store it on the device, or you can store it on a separate location. All right, so here you would select the clone file. If you have one-touch buttons, one-touch buttons is if you know that you have a scan or an email or a fax or a type of copy job that you're going to do every time, but it needs specific settings every time, and it's time consuming. Instead of having to set them up, you would do a one-touch feature on the device, and this would allow you to just go ahead and select that button, do your copy, print, scan, whatever you're looking to do, and those settings would already be pre-configured within there, so you wouldn't have to do it every time. This is very beneficial. I did have a client recently, call me, said, "Hey, I keep having my users, and they keep printing in color, and they're not supposed to, but they also didn't want to have standard accounting enabled." So what they asked us to do is set up a one-touch that was pre-configured to black and white. And all they'd have to do is press that button and run their copies, and there was no issue, and it would just print in black and white. All right, so whenever you're doing your clone file, you can actually pick and choose on what you want to clone. If you don't necessarily need to clone any of the connectivity features, if you want to keep it, say, they're defaulted to DHCP to be able to go ahead and get their own IP address. So if you don't want to copy that, all you have to do is deselect it. Maybe there's specific settings that you want to do. This would be the place you would do it. So maybe you don't have the standard accounting. You could go ahead and remove that as well, so you can customize what you're looking for. All right, so one of the features on here as well is the verify your software to make sure that nothing has been changed since the last time you did it, or nothing major has transpired. All right, so driver install. So I happened to listen to Darknet Diaries, and whenever I heard this episode, I was laughing, and I was so happy because it relates to both worlds that I love, printing and information security. So this is the episode on Darknet Diaries. So one of the things is that most printers are defaulted to port 91.100, and that is basically open to the world. And this hacker giraffe actually used this during, I guess, PewDiePie or whatever his name is. He was doing a battle with somebody to be the top YouTuber. Yes, Darknet Diaries does rock. Well, I appreciate that, Jeff. So, and if you are new to information security, or you just like to hear the red versus blue battles, or just somebody's, how they got their start in information security, or anything like that, or just the cloak and dagger stuff that people do, this is what I listen to. I enjoyed it a lot. But back to the topic. So what he ended up doing is doing a scan of the internet basically, and finding all these open printers and sent print jobs. And he did it more than once. So when it comes down to it, when people are putting a price on being hacked, I mean, this isn't a crazy hack or anything like that. This was just somebody who found printers that were available and open, and he printed. So especially if you're looking at how much you pay for a print job, yeah, this adds up. So whenever you're installing the drivers, and the reason we're going through the drivers is that since you are paying decent price for a customizable device, the drivers are kind of customizable, especially if you do turn off WSD. One of the things is that printer isn't just going to be automatically populated, right? So you're going to have to either on your printer, or sorry, on your server or the end user device. If you have a server, we recommend putting the drivers and sharing them through the server, because it saves your IT some time, and it saves us time if we're doing the actual install there. So you would go to your control panel, device printers, and add the printer, or select add printer. That is a very brief for getting to the control panel and this specific location here. Now, as you can see, I can't find my printer here. It's not populating because we told the printer, don't broadcast who you are, where you're at, and what you're doing. So you would have to select this printer is not listed. And then from there, you would have to let it know specifically how you want to find that printer. We recommend local printer, network printer with manual settings, because you're a pro. Then you would select standard TCP/IP. Now you can do it by host name or by IP address, depending on what your environment is. As soon as it detects your printer, it's going to ask you to select the drivers. If you remember earlier, we went ahead and downloaded the drivers and unzipped them into the computer. So you would select half disk. After you select half disk, made sure to highlight that this is what you would use. I do this because, again, in my time in the Army, nobody showed me this, even after I asked. So it was a point and click and figure it out as you go. But I hope this is beneficial to you there. And this would be the specific, there should only be one file in there, unless you downloaded the generic driver or the universal driver. You would have so many more selections. If you don't need that, we don't recommend downloading it. Download what you need, right? So you select that. Now, the drivers are specific to the device. So you would specify which device you're working on. Since we are using an Ultilink 8055, that's what we recommend selecting. Again, Ultilink typically is with PostScript, so that's what we downloaded. So if you're doing this on a server, then you would share the drive, or I'm sorry, the driver. If you are not on a server, if you're on an individual computer, we don't recommend sharing from the end user. Reason being that if that computer goes down, if that computer is turned off, there goes your printer. And if you have one person supporting 10, 15 people, that's 10, 15 people that are no longer able to print. We typically recommend installing in the end user's device so that they have, if their computer's on, they can print. So we recommend, we're stingy, don't share. So whenever you're done installing your printer, as you can see on the right screen there, the standard port or the raw setting there is 9100. We recommend doing the LPR specified to the LP, and that would minimize any more, PDQ print jobs coming out from nowhere. All right. Now, these are a few settings within the driver, aside from being able to lock down your actual printer. So if you buy a color device and you say, well, you know what, we don't print in color. So you can actually lock it down from the actual embedded web page. But if you want to make sure that each end user is printing in black and white, unless they specifically say they want to print in color. So whenever they go to print, they would have to select this XEROX. They would have to uncheck this box. So we recommend checking that box so that, as a default, they will print in black and white. And the only time they can print in color is if they uncheck that box. And as soon as they exit out of their program or they finish their, go to a different Word document, Excel, or whatever it may be, that resets. So it doesn't stay permanently. So it's only set to that document there. Also, if you're doing the standard XEROX standard accounting under configurations, you're able to go ahead and select that. If you're doing the XEROX standard accounting, this is basically communicating to the printer. This is for an environment that doesn't have a server or anything like that. This would confirm with the printer itself saying, hey, we're standard accounting, this is the person's code, and it would authorize it and allow it to print. As soon as that, you would set this up, you would select standard accounting, and it would ask you to provide the code for that specific user. That way, whenever the office manager or accounting pulls the report, they're able to know, hey, this person printed this much, or printed, how much stuff they actually printed. All right. One thing that I feel is important is support. If you're using managed print services, it's very important to know where the managed print services starts and ends, and when the XEROX support starts. If you're, depending on which program you're on as a managed print service, you would contact the help desk. The 1-800 number that I've provided is a general. So from that number there, if you select your XEROX, non-XEROX, if you are on a some kind of plan, they would let you know. So if it's covered under a managed print service you're doing or you're paying for, they would let you know, it's covered. If you don't have a managed print service and you're not paying for that, you would pay out of pocket for any services, any toner. With managed print services, the toner is included, service is included, and I accidentally received a service bill for one of our devices. It was just a glitch in the system, and they sent me a bill, and my heart dropped. So if you are able to have a managed print service, I would recommend it. One of the two features that I recommend to our clients, especially if they have a help desk or IT, if you're anything like me, if I could fix it on the spot, I would prefer to fix it on the spot, whether that's a computer, a car, anything like that. So I recommend XEROX support online or on their XEROX Support Engage application. It's compatible with Apple and Droid phones. It's a quick chat. I use it constantly as well, so that if I'm working with a client and it's something that's not familiar to me, or it's something I know has to be pushed to service, instead of telling the client after they've spoken to me, to hang up the phone and call the service department, I use both either the application or the online support to speak to an online representative through chat and let them know, the troubleshooting, or, relay that information to the client. And if it comes out that they can't fix it over the phone or through the chat, they submit the service ticket and it's already done. You don't have to tell the client that, you had a 5 to 15 minute conversation, and after you're done, they have to call the support desk. So I use this to kind of be a little proactive with the clients if they do call the office. But again, we're not necessarily customer support. If there are major issues, we do contact, clients do call us and we push that out to the support teams, and we navigate XEROX systems to resolve that situation. Do I have any questions? Any comments? Concerns? Recommendations? So if you do need to get a hold of me, or if you think your company would benefit from any management services, or you have any questions about, if you have a XEROX and you have any questions, please feel free to give me a call. I like to talk. So that is my office number. That is my office email address. If you're interested in ISSA, if you're in the Fayetteville, Fort Bragg area, I am the ISSA communications. Any social media postings that you've seen, I've probably done them within the last year or so. And that is my LinkedIn. Follow me, connect with me. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to assist. That is the company website. If you want to contact us, just drop us a line. All right, well, that does conclude my presentation. If I don't have any questions, I will hold off a little bit longer. If anybody wants to chat, I'm more than happy to. And also, before everybody rolls out, by attending this webinar, you have been put into a drawing for an Amazon gift card. So best of luck to you. All right. And again, this does conclude my presentation. I do thank you for your time in attending Triad of NC Chapter 2020 Summit. I appreciate them for inviting me and allowing me this opportunity to speak and share my knowledge of management services and basic configurations and security of management devices.
Thanks so much, Carlos. That was great.
Thank you.